Conclave. When Cardinal Lawrence is tasked with leading one of the world's most secretive and ancient events, selecting a new pope, he finds himself at the center of a conspiracy that could shake the very foundation of the Catholic Church. This film was directed by Edward Berger and it stars Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, Isabella Rossellini, Lucian Samati, and Carlos Diaz. Apologies if I mispronounced a couple of those names at the end there too. So Conclave is a film that wasn't really on my radar. It definitely was not a film that I was planning to review. But yesterday, my local cinema showed an early screening of it. It's been out in the rest of the world for a couple of months now, but in Australia it doesn't come out until January. So I grabbed the opportunity to go see it because I've heard nothing but great things about it. And yeah, I decided to do a review on this one. It's going to be a shorter one, but I just felt like getting my thoughts out there because I feel like I haven't seen too many people with more mixed reviews, and I'm definitely a bit mixed on this film. I definitely enjoyed it, I'm positive, but I'm not lauding it as one of the best of the year. So hear me out. This is why I wanted to review this one, because I just think I might be able to bring something new to the table. So this is a engrossing, twisting, turning ride that keeps you doubting what's being said and it keeps you guessing what's going to happen next. There is no certainty about what's going to happen next, and there is no certainty about what these characters are going to do next, because while the film does a great job at giving you great insight and a great picture of them, you still don't know them well enough that you know exactly what they're going to do with the power if they do obtain it. You know whether they want it or not, but you don't know whether they're the right ones to have all this power in the palm of their hands, the most important figure in religion. And it creates a good discussion about power and whether the people who want power deserve it, because they may use it for something not so good. And maybe the people who don't want power are the ones that deserve it, because you might feel more trust in them. You might feel like they're more grounded. So it creates all these interesting discussions that you can relate to a lot of things in today's world. Even though the film takes place in today's world, they are sequestered in the Vatican. So it's almost like they're living in a completely different world. So there's a lot of discussion here. It's very clever, and I really like the way it does make you think. All the performances here are fantastic. I think Ralph Fiennes should be in awards consideration for his portrayal of a man who absolutely has the power and the potential to be the next pope, but also as a man who doesn't want it, but the way he's so modest and the way he is so modest around everyone else, not everyone, but some people think that his modesty is false and that he's trying to basically play into the idea of not wanting power. Therefore, he actually does want the power so that more people will vote for him. It's a really fascinating and complex character, and the way that he is compared to the way that people perceive him is really interesting to watch. Stanley Tucci is terrific as the more progressive cardinal, the one who, if he does become pope, will bring the Catholic Church into the future. Like, he is completely repulsed by Adeyemi's homophobia, and Adeyemi is played by Lucian Mzadi and Samadi. Samadi, I'm sorry. Lucian, Adeyemi, I'll call him just Adeyemi for easiest sake, but he's more of a conservative one who is threatening to take the church back, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, whether it goes back to the historical roots of Christianity and some of the darker parts of the Catholic Church, it all creates just such an interesting dynamic where you have all these different people who have all these different views butting heads against each other in a world where they're sequestered, basically. They're stuck in the Vatican until the next pope is elected, and how they all view things, because of the way the Catholic Church does, where they're from. You have another character played by Carlos Diaz who has had a lot of experience in the real world, in war-torn zones, and the way his perspective influences those around him. What I'm trying to say is that there is a lot of different views here, and they're all conflicting, but they're all compelling, and they're all interesting, and you understand all of them. And you agree with some, you can disagree with others, but it makes you think. And it makes you think about power and what people will do if they have it, and what people with certain ideologies may use their power for. It's very clever. It makes you think. And one of the most impressive parts of this film is the fact that the politics are interesting and never ever feel like a mouthpiece from the director or the writer. That is one of the most relieving things ever, because you know when this kind of stuff comes up in films sometimes it can feel preachy, more like a sermon than a story, and Conclave does not fall into that trap, which is great because you don't want to alienate your audience. You want to provoke discussion and thought. You don't want to create fights or arguments, and Conclave does it in a very deftly handled way. For a good portion of the film, each reveal that we get about what we learn about these different cardinals who are potentially going to be the new pope, each one of those reveals carries a fair bit of weight. You really feel like you're like, oh god, okay, that recontextualizes a lot of what has happened before, a lot of the way this person was speaking or anything like that, their views, this might shape their views, this is why they are the way they are, and it all carries a fair bit of weight, and it really does give you that impression where you're like, oh god, this person may not be the optimal choice. Maybe we are voting for the least worst person, which is a scary thought. You don't want to vote for the least worst person, but unfortunately that's the way it is, and I found that to be quite profound, and that's going to stick with me for a long time, is the least worst person. Whatever you see on the outset may not be them at all. They are a completely different person behind closed doors, and it's thought-provoking. On a more film level, this film is magnificently shot. There's always this real blood red image going up against the kind of dreary Vatican bricks, basically, and everything is just staggering to look at. The costumes, I guess I should say, just the way it's all so red. There's one scene where there's people walking with these white umbrellas, which is just spectacular to look at. The film is marvelously shot and the use of color is fantastic. And while I certainly enjoyed this film, I do have a significant amount of problems with it that I feel like are worth mentioning. I haven't seen many people mention these problems, and maybe these just weren't things that bothered them, but they certainly bothered me, and I think it's worth mentioning because I feel like I'm on a bit of an island with this. But as much as I enjoyed all of the reveals that we got and how it's almost like peeling back the onion layers, once you get into the third act of this film, there is so many repetitive twists and increasingly egregious ones that I kind of felt like I was rolling my eyes at the screen a little bit towards the end of this film. Like, it was just like, really? Really? That's what's going on? And then this is happening, and then that's happening. Like, it just kind of was a bit much, and I understand that that is kind of like the point, is that no one is, perfect or maybe even the right choice, but by the time it got to the end, it almost felt like they were running out of ideas and they just had to keep throwing in new twists every 5 minutes. And another problem I had with this was the way the twists were delivered. You have this character who is literally just used for spouting exposition. He comes in probably like 4 or 5 times in the entire film, pulls Cardinal Lawrence aside and says, "May I have a word with you in private?" And he pulls him aside and then drops this massive bombshell of information on Cardinal Lawrence. And it's just like, are you going to do this for every single reveal or just every second reveal? Because it's like they just do it over and over and over again. I was pretty disappointed with the repetitive storytelling approach and just the sheer absurdity of the reveals that we ended up getting and how far it all went. I found it quite exhausting, and one of the things that would have helped this, I think, would have been to have a bit of a lighter tone. Now, it's not like a dead serious film. It definitely has its more darkly comedic aspects to it, but I wish it had have lent a little bit more into that, because it may have made the egregiousness of some of the twists a little more palatable. And while the sound of this film was really good, like you're having all these characters in the Sistine Chapel, so their voices really echo and are loud, the musical score I really didn't like whatsoever. Now, I don't know whether it's just because it was too much for a film like this, a very dialogue-driven film. It was very loud and overbearing, but it was repetitive, it was annoying. It may have worked better in another film, but I didn't like it. It got on my nerves, it got grating, it just felt like it was almost like it was trying to keep the audience awake or something like that. The way it kept pounding you every 5 minutes or so. It was just like, look, this is an engaging film. I don't need after every sentence some big boom, boom. I don't need that. And lastly, I don't think this is going to be the kind of film that I'm going to go back to very often, if ever. And that's something that is more of a play on my score than most other people, is rewatchability, because I do love rewatching films that I really enjoy. And this one, while it has the makings of a film that you could dissect and rewatch and pick up more each viewing, I just don't think it is that film. I think you can watch this once and get pretty much everything out of it that you need to. You might think about it for a day or so and write down your thoughts and you'll be like, yep, that's really interesting. But I think after that, there's no real more reason to go back to it. I feel like you might have eaten all of the marrow off the bone and you're just left with the bone. It was delicious, but I just wish that there was a little bit more to dissect or to analyze, because I don't think this one is going to stick with me as long as it was intended to. So overall, Conclave was a really solid film. I don't seem to be loving it as much as everyone else, but it is still really well done. It's got great acting, great performances. It's got some really cleverly handled themes. I just wish it was a bit more creative with its storytelling, and that there was maybe a little bit more to dissect, because while I definitely enjoyed it and I definitely enjoy the way it makes my brain, it's a stimulating one. It's not as stimulating as I think a concept like this could be. Conclave is a film that is absolutely worth a watch. Thank you so much for watching my review of Conclave. Let me know if you've checked this one out, because I think a lot of my viewers are from the US or the UK, so I'm sure this film's been out for a little while over there, so please, let me know what you thought of this. Did you have some of the same problems that I have? If so, let me know. If not, then please let me know. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why this is one of the best films of the year, because a lot of people are saying that. But yeah, I'd love to talk more about this one, and I'll see you all later. Bye.